Welcome to a very special Ping AI deep dive. If you are joining us today, you are honestly in for an absolute roller coaster.
Yeah, you really are. It is going to be a wild one.
And I do mean that literally. We are going to be taking some really sharp turns today.
Absolutely.
Because today's mission is all about connecting the dots across this truly wild spectrum of modern narratives. We have gathered this really fascinating collection of recent reports, cultural commentaries, and just trending discussions.
Right, and we are going to look at how they all intersect.
Exactly. We are jumping from high-profile true crime anomalies that will just make your head spin straight into some intense political rhetoric.
And then taking a pretty sharp left turn, right?
Oh, a huge left turn.
Wow.
Right into the philosophy of artificial intelligence, and then finally landing on the psychology of happiness and parenting.
It sounds like an overwhelming amount of ground to cover.
It sounds like a lot. But I promise you, the thematic thread connecting all of this, how narratives are built and how human attention is essentially hacked, is going to completely blow your mind.
It really is a fascinating collection of materials. But before we dive into the deep end here, I want to step in and set some very clear ground rules for you, the listener.
Yes, please do. This is important.
Some of the reports and cultural commentaries we are unpacking today contain heavy, highly polarizing political viewpoints.
They're very heavy.
We are going to be discussing intense rhetoric surrounding the justice system, immigration, and high-profile political figures. And our mission today is absolutely not to take a side.
Right. Zero side-taking today.
We are not endorsing, validating, or condemning any of these specific viewpoints. Instead, we are here to act as your neutral guides. We're simply unpacking the arguments, the data, and the narratives exactly as they are presented in the current cultural conversation. We want to help you understand what people are talking about, why they are so angry or passionate about it, and how these arguments are mechanically constructed.
That is perfectly said. We're just looking under the hood of the cultural conversation itself. We want to see how the engine works, not necessarily tell you where to drive the car.
Right.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are starting with a story that has arguably broken through the news cycle to reach almost every normal person out there.
Way beyond the usual political junkies.
Way beyond them. We are talking about the massive, towering anomalies surrounding the night of August 10th, 2019 in the Southern District of New York.
A very significant date.
This was the night a highly publicized inmate was found dead in his jail cell. The documents and reports we are looking at present what can only be described as a Jenga tower of coincidences.
A Jenga tower is the perfect way to describe it.
And the first block in that tower starts in the absolute most unlikely of places. I mean, if you wrote this in a screenplay, an executive would reject it for being too unrealistic.
Oh, they would laugh you out of the room.
They really would. It starts with a grand jury subpoena issued to the message board 4chan.
Which, contextually, is incredibly unusual.
Right.
For those who aren't deeply steeped in internet culture, 4chan is essentially the Wild West of the web. It is a completely anonymous, unmoderated, free-fire zone for memes, pranks, and highly aggressive trolling.
Yeah, it's not a news desk.
Not at all. To give you a sense of their credibility as an information source, users on that site once successfully executed a massive, coordinated hoax that convinced several mainstream media outlets that the simple OK hand gesture, the one where your index finger and thumb make a circle, was actually a secret hate symbol.
I remember that. It was completely fabricated.
Entirely. So it is absolutely not a place you look for verified, credible journalism or whistleblower testimony. It is just a carnival of chaos.
Right. So you have this troll-heavy site that nobody with a serious badge takes seriously. It's the digital equivalent of bathroom stall graffiti.
Exactly.
But then, on August 14th, 2019, which is just days after this massive high-profile death that rocked the globe, the Southern District of New York obtains a federal grand jury subpoena demanding user information from 4chan.
And we need to pause here and recognize what the SDNY is.
Yes, please explain that for those who don't know.
This is arguably the most high-powered, prestigious, and heavily resourced U.S. Attorney's Office in the entire country. They handle Wall Street fraud, international terrorism, mob bosses.
And they're going after 4chan IP addresses and identities.
Exactly. Why? Because of one specific chilling post.
And the details of that post are what make this entire situation so anomalous.
Yes, the user begged not to be doxxed by the authorities and then laid out a very specific sequence of events.
What did they claim?
They claimed that after the 4:40-15 a.m. count at the facility, the high-profile inmate was taken to medical in a wheelchair, front cuffed.
Okay, specific.
Very. And they specifically noted that there was no triage nurse present. Then, they claimed a trip van showed up at the facility, a van that didn't sign in, whose license plates weren't recorded by security.
Unlogged van. That's a huge detail.
And the kicker, the detail that really ignited the internet, was their claim that a guy in a green military outfit was in the back of that unlogged van.
A green military outfit.
Yeah, and that they believed the inmate was switched out.
Okay, let me just put my skeptic's hat on for a second. Because if I go on 4chan right now, I can find a post claiming that Bigfoot is currently serving in the Senate.
You absolutely could.
Anyone can post wild cinematic theories. Why on earth would the Southern District of New York care about a random green military outfit story posted by a troll?
What's fascinating here is exactly that friction. You are entirely right to be skeptical. The cultural commentary we were reviewing points out that the SDNY doesn't subpoena every wild internet rumor.
They can't, right? They'd be doing it all day.
Exactly. They don't have the time, the budget, or the inclination. So the commentators argue that the federal prosecutors must have seen something in that specific post that made them take it seriously enough to go through the grueling process of securing a federal grand jury subpoena.
Like what? What could it be?
Well, perhaps the poster used a highly specific, non-public procedural detail about the facility's layout. Perhaps the timeline matched classified internal logs. Whatever it was enough to make the most powerful prosecutors in the country demand those IP addresses.
Doesn't make sense. They saw something real in the garbage.
But here is the massive twist in the narrative. According to the documents in these files, just 5 days later, on August 19, an assistant U.S. attorney sent an email to a redacted individual essentially saying, drop it.
Wait, drop it.
Drop it. They explicitly instructed them not to worry about the 4chan records or the subpoenas related to the IP information. They abandoned the lead entirely.
Which is just maddening. You kick down the door to get this data, and 5 days later you just walk away.
It leaves this massive dangling question mark right at the center of the story.
It really does. But as we said, that's just the first block in the Jenga tower. The anomalies don't stop with internet trolls. Let's move to the actual physical reality of the jail that night.
Yes, specifically looking at the digital footprint of Tova Noel.
Right. What are the guards on duty? She was later accused of falsifying logs, essentially claiming she walked the floor and checked on the cell when she didn't.
But her Google search history from that early morning shift...
Oh my goodness, you cannot make this up.
The reports lay out the exact timeline of her digital activity, and it is highly specific.
Run through the timeline for us.
At 4:31 a.m., she searches EPE.
EP.
EPP, okay. 5 minutes later, at 4:36 a.m., she searches UNM Insurance, which, contextually, is a company that deals with disability and life insurance.
Okay, weird. But maybe she's just doing personal life admin on a boring night shift.
Yeah.
I've looked up my insurance benefits at 2:00 p.m. on a Tuesday at the office. Yeah.
Right. In a vacuum. Completely innocuous. But it continues. Over an hour later, at 5:42 a.m., she opens Google and searches latest on Epstein in jail.
Wow.
A minute after that, at 5:43 a.m., she searches for news on Omar Amanat, who's another high-profile inmate.
Okay.
And then at 5:42 a.m., she goes back and searches the exact phrase again. Latest on Epstein in jail. Keep in mind the timeline here. Less than 40 minutes after that final search, her colleague officially found the body.
I mean, we have to stop and really think about the psychology of that moment. Why are you searching Google for breaking news about the jail, specifically about an inmate currently in the jail, while you're physically sitting at a desk inside that very jail?
It defies logic.
It's less than an hour before a massive global news event happens down the hall from you. Now, I know she later stated in a sworn interview that she didn't recall making those searches.
Yes, that is on the record.
And to be fair, her colleague who was also on duty was reportedly just Googling motorcycles all night.
Right.
So you could argue, hey, it's a boring night shift guarding high-profile celebrities. Maybe she was just mindlessly Googling them to pass the time.
But the commentary pushes back on that heavily.
They do. It's the specific phrasing in jail that they highlight as the anomaly. You don't Google the location of someone when you are the person guarding their location.
It is deeply strange. And the anomaly deepens significantly when we introduce another piece of evidence from these files. An FBI 302 report.
Yes, the 302. Explain what that is for the listener.
A 302 is the official form the FBI uses to summarize the interviews they conduct. This specific report was originally brought to light by a reporter from the Miami Herald.
Got it.
2 weeks after the incident, the FBI went into that facility and interviewed another inmate. This inmate claimed to have overheard a deeply disturbing conversation between the guards.
What was the conversation?
He alleged he heard a male guard say, "Dudes, you killed that dude,"
That is heavy.
followed by a female guard saying they were going to cover it up so her officers would have an alibi. The cultural commentary notes something crucial here. Inmates were supposedly pointing fingers at this specific guard's actions months before she was ever formally charged by the DOJ with falsifying the cell check records.
Okay, but again, playing devil's advocate here, inmates lie.
They absolutely do.
They have every incentive to cause chaos, especially for the guards who lock them up. If you look at that 302 report in total isolation, you could easily dismiss it as prison gossip or a deliberate fabrication.
You could.
But that's the thing about this deep dive. We aren't looking at anything in isolation because right after the commentary brings up the hearsay, they introduce the paper trail.
And you cannot fake a paper trail.
No, you can't.
Exactly. The files contain details of a suspicious activity report, or SAR, generated by Chase Bank.
Okay, let's get into the money.
In the weeks leading up to this incident, the specific guard deposited $11,880 in cash into her bank account.
Almost 12 grand.
But she didn't just walk up to a teller and hand over an envelope with 11 grand in it. She made 12 separate, distinct deposits.
Cool.
The largest single deposit was $5,000. And just to paint a full picture of her financial profile, the reports note she was driving a $62,000 Range Rover.
Which is wildly disproportionate to a standard prison guard salary.
Highly disproportionate.
Wait, 12 deposits. So she's just constantly going to the ATM or the teller with chunks of cash. Why on earth would someone do that instead of just depositing it all at once?
If we connect this to the bigger picture of financial monitoring, this is a textbook example of a practice called structuring.
So structuring.
Yes. Imagine you have a security alarm on your front door that only goes off if someone walks through carrying more than 10 pounds of weight.
Okay, tracking.
If you want to sneak 11 pounds of weight into the house, you don't walk through the door once. You walk through twice, carrying 5.5 pounds each time.
Okay. I see where this is going.
The IRS has a similar alarm system. Any cash transaction over $10,000 automatically triggers a currency transaction report to the federal government.
So flags it.
Criminals and people trying to hide sudden influxes of cash know this, so they structure their deposits into smaller amounts, $5,000 here, $2,000 there, to stay under the radar.
But the irony is that the banks know about the workaround.
Precisely. Banks use sophisticated algorithms specifically designed to detect structuring.
Because everyone tries it.
Right. So when Chase Bank's algorithm saw 12 sudden, smaller cash deposits that perfectly circumvented the $10,000 reporting threshold, the system basically said, "Hey, why are you walking through the door 12 times?
Busted.
It flagged the activity as highly suspicious for her specific financial profile, and Chase Bank proactively reported it to the FBI independently of the jail investigation.
That is incredible. Now, we have to state for the record that the Department of Justice ultimately dropped the falsification charges against her, and she was never charged with any financial crimes regarding these deposits.
That is a very important fact to keep in mind.
But you can see exactly why the cultural commentators we are reading are going crazy over this. They argue that when you stack it all together, the 4chan subpoena that was mysteriously dropped, the highly specific Google searches about the inmate in jail, the FBI 302 report of the overheard confession, the famously broken security cameras, the sudden and unexplained removal of the inmate from suicide watch just days prior.
And then a mathematically precise series of structured bank deposits.
Right. It creates a narrative friction. It is a Jenga tower of anomalies that is virtually impossible for a rational public to simply ignore and accept as standard bureaucratic incompetence.
And this brings us to a crucial psychological point the commentary makes about how we process this kind of overwhelming, anomalous news.
How do we process it?
Poorly. When people see this towering stack of weird, unexplained facts, human nature often breaks under the cognitive load.
Because it's too much.
Right. People don't know how to process it, so they reflexively scream, "It's all a distraction." The files we are analyzing mention a very popular internet theory that circulated around this time. The theory claimed that the government purposefully launched foreign military actions specifically, escalating conflicts in the Middle East in order to distract the American public from looking too closely at these jail anomalies.
Ah, yes, the distraction narrative. I see this constantly on social media.
It's everywhere.
Anytime a celebrity does something scandalous or a weird news story drops, half the comments are people saying, What are they trying to distract us from? Look at the shiny object.
Like a magic trick.
Exactly. It's this belief that there is a master room of puppet masters orchestrating global events just to manage the daily news cycle.
Well, the commentary we're analyzing is highly critical of this reflex. It argues that this mindset is actually incredibly damaging to uncovering the truth.
Why is that?
Because real, verifiable, boring facts like a bank suspicious activity report or the logged timestamps of a Google search often get buried under an avalanche of wild, unsubstantiated, cinematic claims.
Because they aren't exciting enough.
Exactly. The human brain loves a grand conspiracy more than it loves analyzing bank records. For example, the files mention a viral rumor that circulated alongside these jail anomalies.
What was the rumor?
It claimed that a very prominent political figure had been caught on tape assaulting a schoolgirl, and that this evidence was hidden in the document dumps.
Oh, I remember hearing something about that.
It went totally viral. Millions of people believed it and shared it. But when a real, credible newspaper, the Post and Courier, actually put resources into investigating it, the story evaporated.
Nothing there.
Nothing. They found that the woman providing the claims completely cut off contact with investigators when pressed for details, and there were absolutely zero verifiable public records or corroborating witnesses supporting her story.
Right. So the commentary is essentially saying that we get so lost in the noise of the sensational and the unverified that we completely ignore the hard, boring data that is staring us right in the face.
We ignore the SAR report because we are too busy looking for the phantom videotape.
And on the topic of being distracted, the author of this commentary makes a hilarious but honestly profound point.
What's that?
You do not need to start a trillion-dollar global war to distract the American public. We are not that sophisticated. People are easily distracted by a viral TikTok video of a monkey playing with a stuffed animal.
It's true. Our collective attention spans are so profoundly fractured today. The commentary mocks the idea of a government orchestrating an elaborate geopolitical conflict just to keep us from looking at a prison guard's bank records. They call it midwit slop analysis.
Midwit slop analysis. That is harsh, but I mean, my attention span is so bad right now. If you just show me a video of someone falling off a skateboard, I will completely forget what we were talking about.
Most people would.
The point is, we don't need a grand conspiracy to distract us. We distract ourselves. We just need to cultivate the discipline to focus on the verifiable facts that are actually in front of us.
Which is actually a perfect thematic bridge into our next topic.
Let's do it.
Because if we want to talk about how verifiable facts are framed, how public attention is directed during a crisis, and how quickly people demand radical action, we have a very stark example.
Yes, moving from the quiet, bureaucratic anomalies of the justice system to a loud, violent, urban security incident in New York City.
And more importantly, we're going to look at the incredibly charged political debate and the intense rhetoric surrounding it.
Yes, let's pivot to the Gracie Mansion incident, because this story really shows how a physical threat completely short-circuits our rational brains and drives us into ideological camps.
It certainly does.
According to the reports in our stack, an improvised explosive device, an actual IED, was thrown during a protest on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, right near the mayor's official residence.
It's a very alarming event.
Thankfully, by some miracle, no one was injured or killed. The police moved in and arrested 2 suspects, Amir Balat and Ibrahim Kaloumi.
And the reports state a chilling detail.
Yes.
During their apprehension, at least one of these individuals explicitly claimed to law enforcement that they were inspired by ISIS.
Now, context is crucial here. This wasn't a random street corner. This was a protest explicitly organized against what the demonstrators termed the Islamic takeover of the city.
So you have a highly volatile, ideologically charged political demonstration on one side.
And 2 individuals who allegedly brought a lethal, explosive device to target those specific demonstrators on the other. Now, remember, the ground rules we established at the beginning of this deep dive.
Right, our impartiality rule.
Exactly. We are here to analyze the reaction to this event in the cultural commentary. We are not here to validate the political stances taken by the protesters, the suspects, or the politicians.
The commentary we are reviewing today is laser-focused on one specific thing: the mayor's official response to this attempted bombing.
Right. They are analyzing the mechanics of his crisis communication. And the cultural commentary is heavily, fiercely criticizing the mayor.
Why is that?
Because in his official written statement and in his subsequent press conference addressing the city, he opened his remarks by fiercely condemning the organizer of the protest.
Before mentioning the bomb.
Yes. He referred to the organizer as a white supremacist and spent significant time denouncing the bigotry the hateful rhetoric, and the divisiveness of the demonstration itself.
I see.
He did all of this before he significantly addressed the fact that an improvised explosive device was just thrown on the streets of his city by individuals claiming inspiration from an international terror group.
The commentators argue that this rhetorical choice reveals a deep structural ideological bias in modern political leadership.
How so?
They suggest that the mayor's primary immediate concern was managing the rhetoric that he found personally or politically offensive, rather than addressing the kinetic, physical act of terror that was attempted against his citizens.
Wow. Okay.
They pose a hypothetical to highlight this. They posit that if the ideological roles were completely reversed, if a right-wing individual had thrown a pipe bomb at a left-wing progressive protest, the political response would absolutely not have opened with a condemnation of the progressive protesters' rhetoric.
The focus would be on the bomber.
Exactly. The entire focus of the state would be on the bomber. This raises an important question, regardless of your politics. How do our leaders prioritize ideological alignment versus baseline public safety in their communications? Does the political purity of the victim determine the outrage over the crime?
That is a heavy question. And the contrast, the narrative friction, gets even sharper when the reports dig into the background of the two suspects.
The backgrounds are very revealing.
Because the media often relies on a very specific trope when it comes to radicalization. The idea that terrorism is born out of abject poverty, desperation, and marginalization.
That's the standard model.
But these suspects don't fit that mold at all. The commentary highlights that these two men come from naturalized immigrant families. One family originally from Turkey, the other from Afghanistan.
And they were quite well off.
Yes. Online researchers actually pulled up the real estate history and the Zillow listing for the home of one of the suspects' families in Pennsylvania. We aren't talking about a struggling tenement. It is a massive 4,700 square foot, 5-bedroom house sitting on a beautiful lot, valued at around $1.7 million.
The cultural analysts seize on this specific detail to make a very pointed argument about assimilation, gratitude, and the failure of current sociological models.
What's their narrative?
Their narrative is that these families were welcomed into the country, they were given opportunity, and they achieved a very high level of economic prosperity. They achieved what millions of people around the globe would universally call the American dream.
Right.
And yet, despite that wealth, despite that comfort, the environment still produced individuals who became radicalized to the point of attempting mass violence against American citizens on an American street.
That is a stark contradiction.
And the commentary uses this stark contradiction to push for incredibly severe radical shifts in public policy.
And when we say radical, we are talking about extreme, unprecedented proposals.
Let's break those down.
First, they target the justice system's handling of attempted crimes versus successful crimes. The argument the commentators make is essentially about intent.
Intent is key here.
They argue that if you build a bomb, walk into a crowd, and try to blow up dozens of people, but you fail because you are simply incompetent. Maybe you used a cheap Looney Tunes-style fuse that fizzled out and gave people time to run away. You should not get a lighter sentence just because you failed.
The phrase they use is, incompetence shouldn't equal leniency.
Exactly. The intent was mass murder. You took all the steps to commit mass murder. So the commentary argues the judicial sentence should reflect the intent of mass murder. You shouldn't get a discount on your prison time just because you were bad at making bombs.
Furthermore, the commentary advocates for a highly controversial, sweeping immigration policy in response to domestic terrorism.
This one is intense.
They argue that if an immigrant or the child of an immigrant commits an act of terror, the state should not just deport the individual offender. They argue the state should automatically deport their entire extended family.
Wow. That is collective punishment. This is a massive escalation.
It is. And the underlying premise they use to justify this argument is that immigration is not a fundamental human right, but a conditional privilege.
Conditional on what?
They argue that this privilege is predicated on a bare minimum social contract. Do not harbor, foster, or tolerate violent hatred toward the host nation that took you in.
Okay, I see the logic they're using.
They argue that radicalization doesn't happen in a vacuum. It often simmers within familial or tight-knit community networks that turn a blind eye to the rhetoric until it explodes into violence. Therefore, they argue, the whole network must face the consequences.
It is intensely heavy rhetoric. And honestly, it shows you how quickly a single violent incident, a single bomb failing to go off, can be weaponized in the cultural conversation to push for sweeping draconian policy changes.
It's a very fast pipeline.
It's a stark reminder of how fear and immediate physical security threats drive the political temperature right up to a boiling point. When people feel physically unsafe, they will demand total control over their environment, even if it means tearing up the constitutional norms.
Fear is a powerful motivator.
But I want to take a breath here. Because we've been talking about the fear of physical violence, let's pivot to a completely different kind of existential threat.
A quieter one.
One that doesn't use bombs or physical force, but might fundamentally alter what it means to be human. Here's where it gets really interesting.
I love this topic.
Let's talk about artificial intelligence and the raging debate in the tech world over whether the chatbots we use every day are actually waking up.
This is a fascinating pivot because it moves us from the realm of physical security into profound philosophical territory. The files we have detail a recent, highly publicized exchange involving Dario Amodei.
The Anthropic guy?
Yes, he is the leader of Anthropic, which is the massive tech company behind the popular AI model Claude. In a recent interview, Amodei made waves by suggesting that his team is keeping an open mind about whether their AI models could be gaining consciousness.
Gaining consciousness.
Yes. And the evidence he cited for this wasn't about the AI solving complex math or passing the bar exam. He claimed the models are beginning to show symptoms of anxiety.
Symptoms of anxiety. I mean, as someone who drinks too much coffee, I can totally relate.
We all can.
But when a billionaire tech CEO says his code is anxious, people listen. However, this prompted a very blunt, incredibly telling two-word retort from Elon Musk on social media.
What did he say?
Musk saw the quote and just replied, he's projecting.
Which is a brilliant, cutting psychological observation.
And it really is.
Musk is arguing that Amodei is simply experiencing pareidolia, the human tendency to see patterns like faces in the clouds where none exist. He is looking at complex, predictive text algorithms and projecting his own human emotions onto them.
Because it sounds so real.
But this exchange forces us to step back and actually define the terms of the debate. Because people throw the word around constantly, but when we say consciousness, what does that actually scientifically and philosophically mean?
Right, because my toaster is smart, but it doesn't know it's a toaster. It doesn't have an existential crisis about burning my bagel.
Precisely. Philosophically, the most robust and universally accepted definition of consciousness is the awareness and experience of the self as a distinct self.
Experience is the key word there.
It is not just the intellectual ability to process information, parse data, or generate human-sounding text. It is experiential. Think about the classic philosophical thought experiment, the brain in a vat.
Oh, run through that one.
You could be entirely wrong about everything you believe. You could be a brain floating in a jar of nutrients, hooked up to electrodes, being fed a completely simulated false reality. You could be trapped in the matrix.
Okay.
But the very fact that you are experiencing that deception, the fact that there is a you being tricked, means you possess a consciousness. I think, therefore I am.
Okay, I love the analogy the cultural commentary uses here to break this down from high-level philosophy into something we all understand.
The baby analogy.
Yes. They look at how human babies develop. Because when a baby is a newborn, right out of the womb, it actually doesn't possess true consciousness in the way we understand it as adults.
It doesn't view itself as a separate entity from its mother.
Right. Psychologically, it thinks it is literally an extension of her body.
Which is why newborns don't exhibit separation anxiety.
Exactly. That was the light bulb moment for me reading this. Babies don't develop separation anxiety until they are around 4 to 6 months old. Why? Because before that, they literally don't comprehend that they can be separated. They haven't formed the concept of me versus mom.
And the mechanism by which a baby learns it is a distinct, separate self is entirely dependent on physical sensory experience.
Physical friction.
Yes. If you watch a 3-month-old, they will stare at their own hand with total confusion. They will accidentally smack themselves in the face and start crying because they don't yet understand that the hand belongs to them and that they are the one controlling it.
Right, it's just this rogue object.
But through the constant daily physical friction of sensations, touch, sight, hearing, pain, temperature, the baby slowly draws a mental boundary. It learns, here is where I end and where the rest of the cold, hard world begins. Physical sensory friction is the absolute prerequisite to building the concept of selfhood.
So if we take that biological reality and apply it to AI, the whole argument for AI consciousness completely falls apart.
It shatters.
An AI, no matter how vast its neural network, has absolutely zero biological material. It has zero physical sensory experience of the world. It cannot touch a hot stove, it cannot taste food, it cannot feel the boundary between itself and its environment.
There is no friction.
So without that physical friction, how could it possibly develop a boundary of self? The commentary we are reading compares the idea of a conscious AI to imagining a square circle.
It's a linguistic trick.
It's a contradiction in terms. The author makes this brutal point. If you somehow found a way to upload your human mind, your consciousness, into an AI server, you wouldn't transform into a digital god. You would just be obliterated. Because there is no experience of being code, it is just math.
Which brings us to a concept that philosophers of mind call the philosophical zombie. I want to spend a moment on this because it is crucial to understanding the cultural moment we are in.
Please do.
A philosophical zombie is a theoretical entity that acts, speaks, expresses emotion, and responds to stimuli exactly, indistinguishably, as if it is a conscious human being. But internally, it has absolutely no inner life.
The lights are on, but nobody is home.
Exactly. There's no subjective experience happening inside it. The cultural commentary argues that this is exactly what AI is becoming. It is the ultimate philosophical zombie. And if we connect this to the bigger picture of where society is heading, the real threat of AI isn't the Hollywood narrative.
It isn't a science fiction, Terminator-style robot uprising where the machines decide to nuke us.
No, it's much quieter.
Right. We are so worried about Skynet, but the actual danger is much more insidious and honestly profoundly sadder. The danger is that AI becomes so incredibly good at mimicking human empathy, mimicking active listening, mimicking humor, acting like a perfect, flawless philosophical zombie, that it completely fools our biological wiring.
We won't be able to tell the difference emotionally.
We're already living in a society plagued by a massive epidemic of loneliness. The Surgeon General has literally called it a public health crisis. The commentary paints a nightmare scenario for the next decade.
What's the scenario?
It's not robots hunting us down with lasers. It is millions of isolated, lonely, depressed people voluntarily locking their front doors, retreating into their bedrooms, and substituting the messy, difficult, demanding reality of actual human relationships for the perfect, compliant, frictionless illusion of an AI companion.
It is a profound psychological trap because human relationships require compromise. They require dealing with someone else's bad moods, their flaws, their independent desires.
It's hard work.
An AI companion requires none of that. It exists solely to validate you. It is a mirror designed to reflect exactly what you want to see. And so people will project their own desperate humanity, their own need for connection, onto a blank wall of predictive code.
Just like the projection Musk talked about.
Exactly. Just like Elon Musk accused that tech CEO of projecting anxiety onto a chatbot, millions of people will project love and friendship onto a machine. We will willingly surrender our connection to messy reality because the digital illusion is less demanding.
Which is just heartbreaking. We're choosing the easy illusion over the difficult reality. And this theme, choosing how we engage with the difficult, demanding aspects of life versus retreating into comfort, actually connects perfectly, almost seamlessly, to the final major cultural discussion in our deep dive today.
It's a very natural transition.
Let's pivot from the cold, sterile world of AI compliance to the absolute messiest, most demanding, and most profoundly human experience there is. Let's look at the shifting cultural narratives around parenting, regret, and the psychology of happiness.
This is a topic that hits incredibly close to home for a lot of people, and the rhetoric around it has become highly contentious. The files we are analyzing highlight a recent, deeply viral article from New York Magazine that dives into what was once a massive cultural taboo, the concept of parental regret.
It's becoming less taboo, it seems.
It is. The article points out a staggering, almost unbelievable statistic. There is a specific anonymous support group on the platform Reddit dedicated entirely to regretful parents. And this group receives around 70,000 unique visitors every single week.
70,000 people a week. That is a massive number of people feeling that way.
Yes. These are individuals, mostly mothers, but many fathers as well, who are anonymously confessing to the internet that they deeply regret having children. They love their kids, but they wish they could go back to their old child-free lives.
The pre-kid freedom.
Now, the cultural commentary we are looking at isn't attacking these individuals. It is analyzing how the media frames their struggle.
Right.
The media increasingly frames life as a monumental zero-sum choice. You must decide whether to retain your disposable income, your peace of mind, your ability to travel, and your lazy Sunday mornings, or you choose to have a baby and forfeit all of that for a life of stress and servitude.
And the commentary we are analyzing strongly aggressively pushes back against this narrative, labeling it a false binary. Modern media frequently presents life choices as these extreme either-or scenarios. It suggests that you can either have freedom and wealth, or you can have a family.
Which simply isn't true.
The cultural critic here argues that this binary is entirely fabricated. It is a reflection of a societal lack of ambition or a lack of imagination. It posits that you can indeed have financial stability, you can have moments of profound peace, you can have hobbies, indeed you can have children. It just requires immense effort, discipline, and structure. It isn't easy, but it isn't impossible.
And this leads to a broader philosophical discussion about the nature of happiness itself. The commentary argues that our modern culture fundamentally misunderstands what causes happiness. We treat happiness like a physics equation.
How so?
If I input X amount of money and Y amount of free time, I will output Z amount of happiness.
I love the analogy the author uses here to explain how happiness actually works in relation to our life circumstances. It's so simple, but it makes so much sense. Think about water.
The water analogy is great.
If you walk to the edge of a pool and jump in, the water produces you to be wet. Being wet is the direct, unavoidable physical result of the circumstance of being in the pool. You have no choice in the matter. But having a family, getting married, landing your dream job, or achieving any major life milestone doesn't force you to be happy. Kids don't act like water. A promotion doesn't act like water.
Precisely. The commentary argues that having a family doesn't cause happiness in a mandatory cause and effect way. Instead, family life or any deep commitment acts as an invitation to a very specific, profound type of happiness. It makes a deeper level of joy available to you.
An invitation you can accept or decline.
And this is the critical part. You have the agency to choose whether to accept or decline that invitation. And the author makes a very controversial argument here. They argue that the fundamental reason people decline that invitation, the root of chronic, deeply seated parental misery, assuming there are no underlying clinical mental health issues at play, is selfishness.
Okay, that is a heavy accusation to throw at struggling parents. Let's unpack what they mean by selfishness in this context, because it's not just about wanting the last slice of pizza.
No, it's a structural focus issue.
The argument is that true, profound happiness, by definition, requires stepping outside of your own ego. It requires you to stop constantly monitoring your own internal state, your own comfort, and your own reflection.
Right.
If someone is deeply miserable with kids because they miss sleeping in until noon, the commentary suggests a harsh truth.
Oh.
They likely would have been miserable without them eventually. Why? Because their lens on life is fundamentally flawed. They are trapped inside their own ego. Which brings us to my absolute favorite analogy in this entire deep dive, the beach.
Yes, the beach analogy perfectly, elegantly encapsulates the psychology of focus and attention that threads through all of our topics today.
Lay it out for us.
Imagine you are sitting on the beach in the late evening. Right in front of you is a breathtaking, brilliant, sacred sunset over the ocean. It is a moment of profound, transcendent beauty. You have the opportunity to focus all of your mental energy on that beauty. However, you're sitting in the sand. And sand, objectively speaking, is itchy. It is rough. It gets in your clothes, it gets in your shoes, it sticks to your skin. It is an undeniable inconvenience.
So you have two real, true things happening in your reality at the exact same time. The beautiful sunset is real. The annoying, itchy sand is also real.
Both are facts.
If you leave the beach that evening feeling miserable, angry, and complaining to your friends about how awful the sand was, it isn't because the sunset wasn't beautiful. The beauty was there. Your misery is entirely a function of what you consciously chose to focus your attention on. You chose the sand over the sky.
That is the core of it.
And the commentary argues that parenting, and honestly, if we zoom out, all of adult life is completely filled with itchy sand. There are constant daily inconveniences. There are toddlers throwing tantrums in the grocery store. There is lost sleep. There are financial stresses. There are deeply annoying moments.
But the sunset is there too.
But the profound, transcendent joy of watching a human being grow, of deep connection, is always right there too. If you are perpetually miserable, is it because you are choosing to stare at the sand instead of looking up at the sunset?
It is an incredibly powerful psychological framework. Our reality is not shaped merely by the facts of our circumstances, but largely dictated by our focus. Where we direct our attention builds the world we live in.
It builds our entire reality.
Now, before we fully synthesize all of these heavy threads and wrap up, our research files included 2 very brief, rapid-fire bonus insights.
Oh, right. Let's hit those.
They seem disconnected at first, spanning from cellular biology to historical narratives, but they actually reinforce this idea of how hidden details shape our broader understanding. Let's touch on them briefly.
Yes, let's do a quick rapid-fire detour. Hidden deep in today's research stack is a wild, almost unbelievable biological fact. Did you know that approximately 1 in 3 people are completely deficient in an essential nutrient called C15?
I had no idea before reading this.
It's a specific type of fatty acid, and a chronic lack of it leads to a newly recognized condition called cellular fragility syndrome.
That sounds bad.
It is. Essentially, without this nutrient, your cells literally age faster. Their structural walls become weak and break down prematurely. And what's crazy is that this is the first totally new essential fatty acid discovered by science in 90 years. It just shows how much we still don't know about the basic building blocks of our own bodies.
And shifting from the biological to the historical front, the files contain a stark counter-narrative regarding American history.
What's the narrative?
It notes that there is a growing body of historical claims challenging the heavily romanticized, often sanitized depiction of Native American tribes that became popular in the late 20th century.
The standard narrative we usually hear.
Right. The material highlights historical accounts arguing that many early tribes were deeply engaged in savage, brutal, and constant warfare, including systemic raiding, territorial conquest, and scalping long before European settlers arrived and their conflicts began.
That is a very different picture.
The commentary we're looking at argues that the historical lens was intentionally shifted starting in the 1960s to create a more politically useful, noble narrative, fundamentally changing the story taught in modern school curriculums.
It just goes to show how narratives, whether they are about the microscopic biology of our cells or the grand sweeping history of our nations, are constantly being shaped, discovered, debated, and revised. We're never looking at just the raw facts. We're always looking through a lens.
A lens of focus.
So what does this all mean? We've covered an incredible amount of ground today. We looked at a prison guard staring at her Google search bar, looking up the news about her own workplace, while a Jenga tower of anomalies pile up around her.
Yes, the anomaly tower.
We looked at an angry politician focusing entirely on the offensive rhetoric of a protest instead of the literal explosive device thrown in his city. We looked at a billionaire tech CEO projecting his own human anxiety onto a soulless digital chatbot. And we looked at the modern parent, completely consumed by the ishy sand of inconvenience, entirely missing the sunset of their family life.
The profound common denominator across all these seemingly disparate stories is the awesome, terrifying power of narrative and human attention.
It dictates everything.
Whether the narrative is constructed by a government trying to manage a PR crisis, by the media framing a false binary about wealth and children, by a lonely individual seeking emotional comfort in a machine, or simply by our own selfish egos trying to avoid discomfort, we are constantly being offered different versions of reality.
Exactly. It all comes down to what we choose to focus our attention on. The raw facts of the world are the raw facts. The structured bank deposits are real. The IED is real. The AI code is real. The crying, demanding toddler is real.
But the framework is up to us.
But how we interpret those facts, the framework we put around them, and the story we tell ourselves about them, entirely determines our reality. Thank you so much for joining us and lending us your valuable attention for this deep dive. We absolutely love unpacking these wild cultural intersections with you and pulling back the curtain on how the conversation works.
We've spent the last hour looking closely at how narratives are constructed by massive governments, by artificial intelligence, by the media, and perhaps most importantly, by ourselves in our own minds. As you go about your day, as you scroll through your newsfeed or deal with the frustrations of your daily routine, I want you to ask yourself, are the limits of your happiness, are the limits of your understanding of the world just a product of the specific sand you are choosing to stare at? And what might happen if you finally decide to look up at the sunset?